What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boy Lynx here with In the Booth, and today we're gonna talk about the track that we're making on the series called Let's Make a Track. I've taken the liberty and already created a couple new elements, and we're gonna dive in depth about what these elements are and what they do to add to the overall song. The two elements I've added, and I've named them here so you can see it a little easier, are these top two, the ARP and the lead. So we're going to take these top two out really quick so we can remind ourselves what are we listening to? What did we start with? What did we carry over from last week? So here's what we carried over from last week. And it repeats itself because I doubled the length from last week just so I had more to work with. So the first thing I added was this lead. Now, just a quick refresher, this lead is actually the exact same synth patch as the main synth. But you can see as I switch between the two, there are some subtle differences. So the differences are mainly in the EQing. So for the main synth, I originally cut off everything below 100 hertz. So that way we could make room for the sub bass and the two could interact well together. However, when I made the lead, leads tend to exist, I'll bring this up here. In the frequency spectrum, leads tend to really be present, or at least I like most of their presence to be right in here, right in this higher mid section. That's where you really want them most present. And then this underlying chordal pattern, this chord pattern that I've got going on, I really wanted to be present down here. So I brought this up and I brought everything else down a little bit, especially in this higher end. I don't want it to be too piercing because that'll really conflict with the lead potentially. So the lead is the exact same Serum preset. It's the exact same synth. One minor difference between this rack and this rack I'll actually show is I went into the reverb and the reverb in here is at 24%. And the reverb in this one is only at 5% because I didn't want quite as much reverb because we'll be doing some more reverb processing much later as we build this track. But notice the EQ. I've cut off everything below 200 hertz so that there's still so that the main synth can have that extra body, and I've brought everything in this in the mids right here where this EQ point is around 500 hertz down to really make sure that the main synth has all the room that it needs. However, I'm going to bring everything up here up because that's where I want the majority of my synth, and I really want it to have a really airy sound. A little bit of sidechain as usual. I believe it's actually harsher. Or no, it's not quite as harsh. This is 85%. The lead's only at 70%. So the lead on its own is also brought down a little bit, but that's because the notes themselves are up higher. They're an octave higher than the main synth. So in order to make sure that we're not blowing people's eardrums, because I'm really bringing them out here, I had to bring it down an extra 2 decibels. But let's hear what the lead sounds like on its own. So it's just a basic pattern. But then again, sometimes the key thing about when you're making EDM is you don't need a super standout melody. Sometimes if you play your cards right, you can actually make it so that the melody that you create is just a perceived combination of multiple different elements. So this is the MIDI for it. It's just going up every single time. The bass note changes as things move forward, but it really helps bring out the chords. It's mainly following the chords that we established in this MIDI file with the main synth. So let's listen to the two of them as they play off each other, the main synth and the lead. So it's pretty cool. I like it. It's some fun stuff to work with. The next element that I made is an ARP. Now, ARPs are generally very rhythmic and very usually faster. You're usually doing 16th notes with them, especially if you're in this 128 tempo that we're at right here. They're usually 16th notes to add a little element of rhythm, but I like to refer to them as almost like tonal rhythm. It's to keep the energy in your song going forward, especially if you want to bring the drums out or if you want to have the drums do something slightly different. It keeps the energy in your song moving forward and doesn't sacrifice any of it. So what the ARP sounds like, well, first, what the ARP is it's actually the same preset originally, but I've detuned it and brought a lot of the white noise out. So and in the effects, I've turned off the distortion and the compressor. And I've kept, I think, the hyper and the dimension the same from the preset, but I've added reverb and delay. So instead of this sort of, we'll listen to the lead one more time. So instead of this grimy sound, you actually get a sound that's much more ethereal. So, all that being said, this one, because it also doesn't have that extra rack of overdrive, reverb, and OTT down here. Since it doesn't have all that extra stuff, it's not as loud, so you have to bring it up to -6. Also, with the reverb and the delay, it's going to have a lot more space in it, so it's also not going to be quite as perceivably loud. So you can bring it up a little bit more to get the balance right. In terms of what it's also sidechained, same as everything else, but it's sidechained less just because I want it to be a little more present on some of those downbeats. EQing, of course, I allow a little bit more than the lead, but I'm bringing down basically everything that is going to potentially conflict with the lead of the main synth, but I'm bringing the high end up just because I really like that kind of sparkly feel. So let's see how this ARP plays with the main synth first, and then we'll see how it plays with the lead. Now let's see how it plays with the lead, the ARP, the lead, and the main synth all together. I can tell you right now, one thing I'm going to do that I just realized that I probably should do is I'm going to put a little bit more reverb back into this guy, into the lead, because I don't like it super dry like that. It's just not quite right. And I'm also going to make him just a little quieter. We'll bring him down 1 decibel and see what that does. I like that sound a little bit more. Let's add in the sub bass and see what it sounds like with all the meat in it. All right, that sounds pretty good. Let's see what the whole thing sounds like now in context. That's pretty good. One other thing that we'll briefly discuss before I take off here is I did make one small change to the sub bass, and that is I added this thing right here, this glue compressor, this low extender. What this thing is doing is it's essentially it's compressing the bass sound and making it very, very consistent, but it's also making it just a little bit louder, specifically in the low end. So this is what it sounds like without this compressor. Doesn't sound too spectacular, but you add the low extender. Now, it may sound like it's just getting louder, but it's getting louder and it's being compressed just ever so slightly. And the whole idea is that you get this nice consistent bass sound that you can work with in your mixing. So like where I have it right now at -5, this is right where I want it to be, and I don't want it to be any louder, any higher. It gives me a lot more control, especially with the soft clip stuff. I might play around with it a little bit more as time goes on, but I think I kind of like where it is right now. So I think that's all I'm going to cover today. Next time we're going to go a little more in depth into the structure of this the 16 bar drop, and we're going to add some fills, some stuff to make it not seem quite as monotonous, because even with all this extra stuff going around, it still sounds just a little monotonous. So we're going to go in there and change some stuff up, vary some stuff, add a little bit of ear candy, and I'll show you guys how you can do that, especially for this kind of music, and then maybe help give you some insights into other kinds of music. But that's it for me. It's been your boy Lynx here on In the Booth with 88.1 The Berg, your Music Central. I'll see you guys next time.